Well, good afternoon, everyone. I now call this meeting of the University Senate to order. A reminder that today we have two parliamentarians here, Nancy Sims, our Senate parliamentarian from the libraries, and Marian Simmons, an independent professional registered parliamentarian from Stillwater. Thank you both for joining us today. Item 2 concerns administrative responses to the University Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 3 is a list of recent faculty, staff, and student deaths that have been sent for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. Timothy Bates, Paul Bergeson, Sheldon Bennett, Douglas Ernie, Edward Frederick, Kelly Kitto, Shwetaba Patel, John Smith, Elmer Wainwright, thank you for observing that moment of silence. Item number 4 is approval of minutes from the University Senate meetings on December 4th and December 8th. Does anyone object to approving of the minutes? Seeing none, this motion is approved by acclamation. Item 5 concerns introductions to the Senate. With that, I'd like to introduce Dean Kip Guy and invite him to say a few words. And invite our provost to do that introduction. Thank you, Provost Ritter.
Thank you, President Cunningham. So it's my pleasure to introduce the Dean of the College of Pharmacy, Dr. Kip Guy. Dr. Guy is a senior academic leader and innovator with more than 20 years of leadership experience in pharmacy, chemical biology, and drug discovery in not-for-profit and academic sectors and across higher ed. Prior to joining University of Minnesota, Dr. Guy served as Dean and Professor of Pharmacy at University of Kentucky's College of Pharmacy, a position he held since 2016. He previously served as the inaugural Chair of Chemical Biology and Therapeutics at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and also held adjunct professor positions at Vanderbilt University and at the University of California, San Francisco. In 2020, Dr. Guy was elected fellow of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and in 2023 won the Phil Portuguese Award for Medicinal Chemistry from the American Chemical Society. His primary interests are in evidence-based practice, health disparities, pharmacy education, and drug discovery. He is the author of 206 papers and book chapters and an inventor with 27 patents. Finally, I'd like to say on a personal note that Dean Guy and I started at the university about the same time this past summer, and he has quickly become a partner to me in thinking about ethical leadership in challenging times. Kip, we are delighted to have your energy, experience, moral sensibility, and collaborative spirit at the College of Pharmacy. Colleagues, please join me in welcoming Dean Guy to the University of Minnesota.
Amber, do we know if Dean Guy has joined us yet?
I'm just looking at the participant list and I don't see him yet.
If not, possibly when he's able to join. If he's able to join later, we can give him a moment. So thank you for that. Onward, item 6 is my report. First of all, I want to thank everyone for the community and the collaboration and the work that faculty, staff, and students have done in these very challenging times for the university community and our community in the city and in the state over the past several months. Friday's news of a reduction of federal immigration enforcement and presence in Minnesota is indeed very welcome news. I have heard and reached out to many across shared governance many conversations with faculty and staff and students on the tremendous impacts that this ICE immigration action has had on our community, on your ability to learn, to teach, to feel safe, and the trauma that many have experienced by what they've witnessed in their communities. I want you to know that we continue to monitor all facets of this as the immigration drawdown occurs, and we know certainly that simply a decrease in ICE agents in the city will not immediately return us to a normal state in how a level of concern, how we respond and heal from a lot of the interactions of the community. And that it's going to take continued work of all coming together. I have to say, I've never been so impressed with the community in how they've come together. I want to thank both the administration and my colleagues, as well as leaders and staff and students across campus. We have been working to advance security measures, supporting unique needs of students across all the campuses, including accommodations, delivering food, delivering prescriptions, providing rides, and working to try to improve and share communications as much as possible so people know what's going on. So again, I want to thank everybody who's caring for our community safety and our well-being, including all of you across shared governance who took the time to meet with me and my team and inform us of what was feeling like for your constituents across your areas of influence. I have the update on health and healthcare after our robust meetings in December on the topic. We certainly learned and doubled down on the value of the important role that you play in shared governance, and thank everybody for the great conversations in December. We do have, as you might have seen in the news, a new agreement with M Physicians and Fairview. This is really a win-win-win for all three organizations. With it, we have academic support for the medical school. We have an investment in facilities. We've secured the physician group practice clinical operations, which many of you heard passionately about from your faculty colleagues in medicine in December. This really represents for us a strategic pivot now that we have secured that partnership with Fairview, making it clear that Fairview will be responsible for the management of hospital operations and the university is responsible for our academic and research missions. With that, we now have the opportunity, as that interaction is solidified, to begin to turn the page to a new era and think about, in addition to how we have a strong partnership with Fairview, how we move to a more pluralistic future, as this is indeed a non-exclusive relationship with Fairview. And allows all of us and physicians, as well as the university, to continue to expand and work with other partners so that we can fulfill our land grant mission and healthcare across the state of Minnesota. On January 30th, the Board of Regents also approved this agreement and also approved the appointment of Dr. Carol Bradford, the interim EVP for Health Affairs and Dean of the Medical School, who joined the university this week. Her first day was on Monday. At this moment, Dr. Bradford, with 10 years of experience as a dean at 2 peer academic medical centers and an executive leader with a history as a vice president of clinical affairs, is exceptionally well positioned to take the helm in both positions while we refocus on our health mission and look to the future. Medical school leadership asked me to move quickly with appointing an interim leader to move us forward, and I appreciate that guidance. Provost Ritter later today will update you, has been working to clarify the guidance and implementation on institutional speech of this resolution from over a year ago now. I want to reiterate that I and the University of Minnesota fully support the right of faculty, staff, and students to engage in that civic expression. In terms of our strategic roadmap, we appreciate all you and your colleagues are doing to advance the roadmap Elevate Extraordinary. We'll be hearing a little bit more about those details from Vice President Ryan Schmissing shortly. Last week, the Board of Regents heard several presentations that reflect the energy building from that, the advancement of an AI hub, continued investment in and strengthening of the St. Paul campus, and advancing our commitment to health sciences through the investment in a hopeful investment in an ask from the state of Minnesota on the dental school, as well as planned expansion at the University of Minnesota, Rochester. The Regents also approved a final set of success measures for Elevate Extraordinary 2030, and those measures will provide a common structure for consistently supporting and reporting oversight by university leadership and the board, enabling clear decision-making. So with that, I am open for questions. Oh, no item. Yep, yes, me. Item for questions. So there's a link for the queue available in the docket, and a QR code will be on screen. As usual, we will rotate between constituencies. I will ask Amber to call on the first person.
All right. Realized I had to get the question queue open first. All right, our first question is from Cal Mergendahl.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you, President Cunningham. I have a quick question about some recent events on our campus and some action the Student Senate is looking into taking in response to that. As probably most of the people on here are aware, there have been repeated protests outside the Graduate Hotel throughout the month of January. And in response to this, the Student Senate at our recent meeting a couple of weeks ago voted to open an investigation into the question of whether there have been federal agents staying at the Graduate Hotel, as well as the university's relationship with the Graduate Hotel in addition to that. So, I mean, I'm assuming to my understanding, the committee that is heading that investigation has not taken a lot of specific actions to reach out to your office and other relevant administration at this time, but are you and your senior leadership team willing and open to engaging with this investigation, providing that information on a prompt and timely basis?
Cal, it's difficult for me to know what a response is until we see a resolution come up. So I'll have to see what you're sending up before certainly we can make any commitments. I appreciate your questions. I'm happy to note the Graduate Hotel is operated by the Hilton in Minneapolis. It is not owned or operated by the university, and we don't control any of the business decisions that are made by the hotel. To the best of all of our university knowledge, there has been no ICE agents at the hotel that we've been informed about. We may not know everything, but certainly in our conversations with the hotel, they have not confirmed that there have been any ICE agents at the hotel. We know that there's been a lot of concern about this, and I appreciate that there's been civic engagement and protest and free speech around the Graduate Hotel and people using their rights to protest to do that. And yeah, I think that's about all we know on it. So it sits on our ground lease, but we don't own or operate it. And since it sits on our ground lease, our police department does support security for it, for example, in protests. Thank you, Cal. Next question.
Next up is David Reddish.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, President Cunningham. I have a follow-up to Cal's question. Because you keep saying there's no confirmed incidents, and I want to know whether you mean no confirmed, meaning you can prove that they've not been true, or whether you actually are using that as not significant, meaning you can't test it. And I want to follow up with that by pointing out I actually sent you a report from a colleague who gave her name and was willing to share her name with you. I don't have permission to share it with the Senate, which had pictures of ICE agents and the statement that she was willing to make personally that she had seen and interacted with ICE agents at the Graduate. I want to follow up with that I want to point out that part of the problem with this is that there's a credibility issue. I got that information because I went to my faculty and my colleagues in my department and specifically said, the president says there are no confirmed cases, and they said, here they are. So I forwarded that to your committee, to your team, and I have not received a response. I also want to ask you to move forward on some of these additional things, like you've mentioned already that ISSS has been bulked up. So for help, I would like to see you doing more of those things, like making a statement about not sharing student information or faculty information with the federal government on these things. There's still stuff that is concerning, and I'm reporting from my constituents that
Sure.
they're very still upset.
Yeah, well, David, thank you for that. You know, when somebody asks me a question, I can only tell you what I know, right?
Yes.
So my administration and our security has tracked down any number of sightings and issues. And what they tell me by the investigations they've done is that they don't have any confirmed reports. Does that mean that there is
But I think it's important to separate not confirmed. I mean, I'm a scientist. Not significant doesn't mean not.
Yeah, David, this is the clerk of the Senate. Your 2 minutes are up.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. So,
Oops.
David, I'll just finish by saying to you, I hear you. I'm trying to give you the most honest answer I have. I also have no reason to lie about this. It doesn't help me at all. If there were folks there, there'd be no reason for me not to say so. You know, we certainly asked the hotel quite a bit. It's up to them to give more clarifying information, and they declined to say anything publicly about it. And that's the end of my authority with them. But I can tell you what I know and what I've been told by people that I think are trying to do good work and give out real information is they said that that's to the best of their knowledge, that's what we know. So that's what I know. I do know occupancy at the hotel is down quite a bit. We've had a number of sports teams that we've asked to stay somewhere else because they need they need sleep. I know that there's been many people traveling in that have not stayed there because they're not, they want somewhere that is more peaceful, that's hurting our on-campus visits, et cetera. So, we all want peace and, a return out of these traumatic events. And I understand there's a credibility issue. What I can tell you is I'm honest with you about what I know. I don't know.
I'm not suggesting that you're lying. I'm just telling you there's a credibility concern, and it would be very helpful to clarify what not confirmed means, because
it means that all the people in my administration, when I ask them and I've asked them to follow up on, have told me that they do not believe that there's anybody there, but that's because they would have to be told that by somebody, right? So
thank you.
Yeah. Next question.
We have one more in the queue, and it is from Ava von Dassau.
Thank you. I would like to ask one question about the strategic plan that you are touting. It's transparently a marketing plan. Your budget has, for this fiscal year, required colleges to make substantial cuts to academic programs and reduce especially non-tenure track instructors. And so my question is, with all those cuts to academic programs and effectively transferring money to AI from academic programs, what is your marketing plan going to cost?
So Eva, I'll try to answer your question. First of all, I'll point it out, this is not my strategic plan. It's a community plan that had thousands of points of input, a community steering committee, and worked for over a year to build a plan for where people wanted to see the future of the University of Minnesota go. There were budget cuts last year due to cuts in the state budget. It is not up to me how those got instituted in your school. I did not dictate that happened with any particular kind of faculty. Those are decisions made by your dean. All senior leaders, including deans, when they have less money, have to make strategic decisions. What a strategic roadmap does, though, however, is help point where the universities and where the school's priorities are. So as you're making difficult budget decisions, there's points of where to invest with the money that's available. There also will be fundraising that will be done and other ways to work for it. Most of the work will happen in the schools. And so I encourage you to work with your school on how the strategic plan can best improve your mission in your school. Thank you so much, Eva.
Since I did not use up my 2 minutes, I would like to follow up. I tried to make it short. Those putative 11,000 points of contact were via surveys. I answered them too. That doesn't mean that I had effective input into this plan. We have already observed that a staff position in the geospatial was cut. That supposedly is one of the priorities in the plan. It does not seem as if the components of the plan itself are being effectively supported through staffing decisions that we have seen being made so far.
Is there a question there, Eva?
My question was not answered. I asked how much your marketing plan is going to cost, and you didn't answer that.
So the strategic plan is not a marketing plan. The person that was cut in the unit that you talked about it's up to the decision of the local leaders of how that gets implemented. I would suggest that as local leaders are making decisions, that they are using the strategic plan to guide those decisions going forward. It was not 11,000 points of contact in a survey. We had hundreds of town halls, hundreds of in-person sessions that happened where community dialogue and feedback was given. So thank you for your question so much, Eva. That's the last question. That was the last question. Okay, moving on. I'm getting there. Wrong section. Yes, I believe this is the provost report. Yes, item 8 is the provost report. Provost Ritter, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I'd like to provide a brief update on progress of the transition back to in-person teaching before discussing the new guidance on institutional speech, which will be sent out this week. First, on the return to the original course modalities on the Twin Cities campus, based on information from the Office of Undergraduate Education and our schools and colleges, the vast majority of our students are fully transitioned back to largely in-person learning. In a handful of cases, we are working with students who have ongoing attendance concerns, and we'll do everything we can to support their success. I appreciate the energy that's been required to carry forward during what's been a really difficult time for our state and a challenging time for all of our campuses. As our colleagues at institutions across the country began their spring semester normally, our campuses were faced with real-time decision-making during a volatile statewide federal operation. Our institutional obligations were unchanged. In-person requirements for our international students to maintain their visa status, for financial aid processes, and to our accreditors. Through it all, we have done our best to be as nimble and supportive as possible. For all of this, I am really grateful for the good work that has gone into this effort on the part of instructors, faculty, staff, advisors, and assistant and associate deans. I also want to call out the many student organizations that showed up for their classmates with food, with transportation, and other things. It is gratifying to see the goodwill and sense of university community exhibited in the Twin Cities and across our campuses. Second, on institutional speech. This week, my office is releasing a set of FAQs that seek to clarify and specify the application of the resolution related to response to President's Task Force on Institutional Speech, which was adopted by the University Board of Regents in March 2025. I recognize, of course, that for some, this resolution has been controversial since it was passed. Some members of the university community contend that the resolution undermines academic freedom and chills free speech. Others argue that the resolution seeks to protect individual academic freedom by discouraging the university from taking stances on political matters that are not core to our mission or operations. There have also been concerns expressed about the process by which the principles articulated in the resolution are applied, which have been described by some as a black box that creates anxiety or confusion for faculty and staff. Finally, leaders of some of our centers and institutes have argued that the resolution undermines their ability to educate the public on key issues within their areas of scholarly expertise. To address these issues, I've spent considerable time since my arrival engaging with various stakeholder groups within the university to understand their concerns and seek their guidance on what might be done to address them. I've read commentaries and reports and met with the leaders of AAUP, AFT, the FCC, the members of the original task force on institutional speech, the advisory group that was formed last spring on this issue, other individual concerned faculty, and various center directors from across the university. I'm grateful to all of those who took the time to share their views with me. I've also reviewed policies and FAQs from other universities that have adopted institutional neutrality policies and worked with Dean Bill McEverin of the law school on developing these FAQs. What you will see when you read the FAQs is an explanation of the concept of institutional neutrality and how it is intended to protect academic freedom. There's also a discussion of the motivation behind the shift to institutional neutrality at the university. The FAQs specify what constitutes an institutional statement for the purpose of applying the resolution, and also clarify when a statement is likely to be considered a form of academic speech and therefore protected. The guidelines also describe how the Provost's office will work informally to resolve the concerns about a statement and discuss possible cures that would allow a statement to no longer be considered in violation of the resolution. If this informal resolution process doesn't succeed, then the situation will be taken for consideration to the newly proposed Provost Advisory Committee on Institutional Speech so that this new committee may review the facts and provide input. I will be consulting with the FCC on constituting this new committee. Next, the FAQs address the role of centers and institutes and how their public outreach missions are protected within the terms of the Regents' resolution. Finally, there is discussion of what more can and should be done to promote and protect academic freedom and freedom of expression. Earlier this afternoon, I previewed the FAQs with the FCC, and we had a lively and very thoughtful conversation. I know that for some, concerns about the Regents' resolution and ongoing threats to academic freedom will remain. However, I hope that for many of you, these FAQs will provide clarity and reassurance about the meaning and intent behind the idea of institutional neutrality, about the process by which these principles are being applied, about the protection that is afforded to centers and institutes, and about the university's overall commitment to academic freedom and free expression. Further, this is not the end of the story. In terms of lingering questions that may remain, I expect to remain engaged through shared governance and other forums with stakeholder groups on this and other matters of concern for our university community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Provost Ritter. Before we go to questions for the provost, I do see Dean Guy has arrived. We gave a lovely introduction about you before, Dean Guy. Would you like to say a few words to the community?
Well, let's start with Dean Guy apologizes for being late to the meeting.
Our timing might have been off, no worry.
Oh no, I think this was completely the fault on my side. Had a student in the office and was dealing with something. So I'm glad to actually finally be here, and I understand from Provost Ritter that I had a very nice introduction. So I appreciate the kind words from whoever gave them. Um, I I probably cannot express how happy I've been to have chosen to move to Minnesota at the time that I did, which may sound very funny, but if you know that I came from Kentucky, I think moving to this community at this moment in time and getting to experience the way that it has pulled together in the face of what's been going on and being able to be a part of that has just been a really wonderful thing and given me a amazing insight into the culture here. So I'm even more overjoyed to be here than I was 6 months ago. And it's been, I don't probably need to tell this group what an incredible place it is, but I love the culture here. I love being able to be part of the leadership team and really am enjoying getting to know everybody and doing my job here.
Great. Well, thank you. The feeling is mutual. We're delighted to have you here, and you've already made a tremendous impact with your leadership across the community, with your collaborative spirit and your great input. So with that, thank you so much. I'll move to item 9, which is questions for the provost. Amber, please call on the first person.
All right. Giving the queue a second to populate here. First up, we have Jessica Lopez Lyman.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Provost Ritter, good afternoon. I want to ask a question about the modality. So in the email we received, you said, we understand that fewer than 10% of our students are choosing remote or flexible options when an in-person option is available. And I think when we look at the demographics of our student population, it makes sense. So I want to speak and ask a question regarding those 10%. I have students who are still sheltering in place. I have students who are afraid that they won't be able to meet the graduation requirements when they have, 10 weeks left here at the university. Some of them are US citizens, but they come from mixed status families, and they're afraid that if they get detained because they are visibly brown, their parents cannot go to the Whipple building to get them out. I have lost students who have taken a withdrawal from the university even last semester before Operation Metro Surge began because they were so afraid to ride a bus downtown to come to campus. So regardless if we think that ICE has been on or not on campus, the fact of the matter is that many of these students are not residential students. They do not live in the dorms. They are coming from faraway suburbs. They are coming from South Minneapolis. And the commute to and from campus is extremely dangerous. I understand that they have potential options to continue the distance learning, but what I'm experiencing and hearing from students is that their professors, because it has not been mandated by you, the provost, are not allowing them to remain online. And so they're afraid that they might have to withdraw from the class or from the university in general. And so my question to you is, if you could be more proactive, or how could you be more proactive to protect these students? I know it's very small in number, but when they graduate, it's not just that they're the first in the family, they will drastically change multiple families, mobility and ability to be in this country. Their graduation really matters. So how can you protect these students in a more proactive way?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And you've certainly articulated the situation of some of our students, particularly from the communities that you've talked about, and we're well aware of that. And as I said in the messaging that I sent out to the community, and as I've said in the messaging that I've given to deans and our leaders repeatedly, our goal is to help and support every one of our students, right? I've certainly not told folks, don't support a student. I've said, please work and see what we can do to support each one of our students. And among the things that we've talked through with folks have been things like being able to provide people with places to stay, room in the dorms on campus, because I know about the concern about transportation. other modes of transportation for people who have been afraid to leave their houses, food support for people who've been afraid to go to work, we've been doing emergency funding. Those are some of the kinds of things that we've been doing in all of this. And we've asked that all of our students who have ongoing concerns meet with an advisor so that they can review what resources they are, figure out what the issues are, and see what we can do to support them. And finally, I would say that the description of why this matters, that it's not just transforming one person's life, but often a whole family and a whole community, is exactly right. And thank you for that reminder as well.
Okay, next up, in our tradition of rotating through constituencies is Angie Peltier, who is PNA.
Hello, Provost, and thank you, Amber. While we periodically have the opportunity to evaluate the performance of our college dean and associate dean, we have no such opportunity for folks that work in middle management and have some leadership role over us. And I work in the College of Extension. Nor do we have that ability with folks that work as service providers within our college. I used to serve on the faculty consultative committee for my college. And my entire reason for joining that was to try and stand up a program of full circle accountability so that all evaluations of performance aren't just happening top down, but that there's evaluations happening from the bottom up as well. And one of the last times before we lost our HR director, she mentioned that Board of Regents were very interested in establishing just such a policy and that it might be run out of the provost's office. I was curious if there's any such plans, and I think that it's really important that there is accountability at all levels within our organization to ensure that taxpayer dollars are as well spent as possible, and that if there needs to be, I mean, everybody needs to know that bad behavior is being noticed. Because some people need that threat over their heads in order to act properly with other colleagues. And so that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I'm not aware of the proposal that there be a system like this run out of the provost's office, but I have been impressed since I've gotten here at the commitment to collecting and paying attention to information that comes, for instance, from the staff engagement surveys. We've certainly spent a fair amount of time talking that through at the cabinet level. I've had conversations with various deans on that as well. But I think some of the questions that you raise are appropriate questions for us to take a look at and consider. So let me see what I can find out.
Thank you.
I think I'll just add to that maybe for Brianna, if we can make a note, maybe I can see what we can find out about perhaps what I don't know if it's run out of the HR office or where that was being proposed, but let's see if we can get some information back to you on that. Okay, I think with that, we're at time, Amber, correct? Yeah. So item 10 is the SCC FCC Chair's report. In the interest of time, Professor Leo has submitted a written report. He invites questions by email, and his email address is listed in the docket. Item 11 is the Faculty Legislative Liaison Report. Professor B, if you could present this item. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Everybody can hear me okay? My name is Mark B. I'm a faculty member in the College of Biological Sciences, and I'm currently serving as one of the university's 2 faculty legislative liaisons. I'm also a recent past chair of the Faculty Consultative Committee. And today I wanted to just give you a brief overview of sort of where things are with the legislature as we start out. As many of you, I'm sure, know, we have a divided legislature that started its session on Tuesday of this week. There was a 1-seat DFL majority in the Senate and a tie between the Republicans and the DFL in the House. The state budget operates on a 2-year cycle called the biennium. Last year was a budget year, and so you've heard a lot of discussions about the university's budget requests and so forth. This is what we would call a bonding year. And so a bonding year is a legislative session focused on passing a capital investment bill that authorizes state borrowing for long-term public infrastructure like roads, bridges, and, as it turns out, university buildings. And I'm going to point out, and this is in the context of a divided legislature, that bonding bills require 60% supermajority for passage in each chamber. And so bonding bills, for those to move forward, would require some level of bipartisan support. And so in the graphic before you, what you can see here is a sort of a brief overview of the university's state bonding request for this year. And I just want to walk you through it very quickly. There are sort of 3 main priorities that are in the university's bonding request. The first of these is a request for $100 million for HEAPR. That stands for Higher Education Asset Preservation and Replacement. And this is a special fund from the state that goes toward renovating and repairing buildings on the University of Minnesota campus and Min-State as well. In the docket materials, I've included a link to the list of projects that are on the HEAPR list this year. There are 50 of them. They span 45 buildings, all 5 campuses. And so I would encourage you to check that out to see if your building or campus is on there. Well, your campus is on there. See if your building is on there. And these are for projects related to like asbestos abatement, fixing leaky roofs and windows, and fixing elevators that don't work and that sort of thing. Second priority on the use and the use request is $84 million for the St. Paul Campus Center. And so if you've looked through the new strategic roadmap, Elevate Extraordinary 2030, you will know that sort of reinvigorating the St. Paul campus is part of one of the imperatives of that plan. So the university is asking the state for $84 million. That would be a partnership that the university would put up $42 million, I believe. And this would be to replace the St. Paul Student Center and the library on the St. Paul campus with a sort of more modern facilities that integrate new sort of state-of-the-art classrooms, meeting spaces, food, health care services, and a new library. The third and final part of the university's ask is $100 million for renovating the dental clinics. The university would be putting up $50 million for this. If you've had your gums and teeth poked and prodded by a dentist in this state, there's a 3 in 4 chance that that was a University of Minnesota graduate. The spaces where they're trained haven't been updated in appears to be about a half century. And so you can imagine things are a little sort of out of date. And so there's a plan to sort of renovate several floors of Moose Tower to sort of update the space, which would allow us to attract more dentists. I think they're increasing capacity as well, so we can serve the state's dental needs. So let me put some of this in some additional context. The budget forecast is a little gloomy. We have a surplus going into this year with a projected structural deficit of about $3 billion, I think, heading into the next biennium. And so money's tight. The governor in mid-January released his recommended bonding bill, or his recommendations for bonding, and he's recommending about 3/4 of what the university has requested for HEAPR, and he's not recommending anything for the other 2 priorities in the ask. And so if you notice the third column there, it's filled with question marks. That's because the legislature just returned to session this week. They're going to be identifying their sort of funding priorities moving forward. And so those have yet to be determined. And this brings me to the last point I want to make, and that is how can students and staff and faculty get engaged and try to help convince the legislature that investing in the university is a good thing for the state. And the easiest way for you to do that is to become what's called a UMN advocate. You can see the email address at the slide. It's just advocate.umn.edu. And if you join, you'll be brought into a list where government relations will share sort of scripted emails that are timely about, maybe a certain vote is taking place or some big decision about funding targets is being made in a committee. And there might be some scripted text, but there's also a place for you to customize your text to tell your story. And I know I'm out of time. I just want to emphasize that these stories matter. We hear from legislators that they use the volume of sort of emails and contacts that they have to sort of set their own priorities. And so I would encourage all of you to join UMN Advocates to try to help out and come to the Capitol next Tuesday, February 24th for UMN Day at the Capitol. Starts at 10 o'clock. Hope to see you all in the rotunda. I think Amber put my email in the chat, and feel free to reach out and contact me anytime. Thank you.
Mark, thank you so much for that report, as well as for your service here as a legislative liaison. I don't know that we have time for questions. Should we have any, if there's any questions? Not on the agenda, I'm told. Okay, reach out to Mark B if there's any questions. Thank you so much, Mark. Item 12 is discussion and action on a statement of support for Somali, Latino, and other vulnerable groups. Professor Leo will introduce this item. Professor Leo, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Cunningham. So most of you might remember that this statement was brought up as new business at the December meeting, and it was referred to the Senate Consultative Committee. This was before the winter break. The Senate Consultative Committee met on January 8th, so they had a special meeting to discuss this statement, and Professor Ganesh Nanthan was there. She's the one who brought the original statement, and the committee worked with her to revise the statement to what you see in your agenda. The only thing I can add is that earlier this week, Professor Ganesh Nanthan suggested a friendly amendment to include Alex Preddy in the statement, which of course was accepted as a friendly amendment and shared with the SCC. And so certainly we as a committee hope that the full Senate is in support of this statement as well. So that's what I have to say.
Great, thank you. We will now proceed to debate. The link to the debate queue is in the docket and the QR code is on screen. We'll rotate between pros and cons and between constituencies as feasible. Amber, please call on the first speaker.
Give it a minute to see if anyone signs up. I'm not seeing anyone in the queue. I don't anticipate there'll be a lot of debate about this anyway, but if someone's trying to come in, maybe give a heads up. Oh, we got one. Okay. Sarah Buchanan, pro.
Hi, I just want to say thank you to everybody who was involved in drafting this this proposal. I think that it is a bit overdue, and I'm really glad that Dr. Leo and the others have worked hard on this to make it inclusive and to tell our Somali and Latino students and faculty and staff that, yes, they are an integral part of our community. We need them, and we're grateful that they're here. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments being asked for, we will proceed to the vote. Voting will be via Zoom. I remind everyone that only senators and designated alternates in the place of a senator should vote. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 141 ayes and 6 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you. Item 13 refers to the strategic plan. Ryan Schmiesing, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, I believe was asked by this group to come and to provide a presentation. So I'll invite him now to do so, and then we can proceed to discussion.
Thanks, President Cunningham. I think, Amber, you have the slides to put up. So first, thank you, and my apologies. It's taken me a bit longer to get here after there was discussion last year to provide a high-level update of where we are with the roadmap. You can go ahead and advance the slide. Today, I want to just talk briefly about 4 things at a high level. One is a review of the plan framework that we've heard a lot about, but I want to share a bit more about that. Status of action teams that are working on the roadmap specifically. And then a little bit about measuring documented success, and the president referenced that in her report. And then just comment on what's next in engagement in the community across all of our campuses. So if we go to the next slide, a reminder on the framework of the plan. The plan has 5 imperatives that represent the strengths of the institution very broadly. 20 focus areas that represent initiative areas for the university. And then each of those focus areas have key early actions, and that's what I'm going to focus on in the next slide. The key early actions identified in the roadmap that you can see, and there's the website on the previous slide, and I think you all have the slides, gives an example of where each of the action teams are focusing. So each of the action teams that are representative of the university very broadly, and there's about 165 to 185 individuals on those action teams. Each action team has a lead or a co-lead that's broadly representative of our institution campuses as well. So their primary goal is to operationalize the key early actions that you would see in the document of the roadmap. Those key early actions range from 2 to 3 per focus area, with some having 5 to 7 per focus area. And their responsibility then is to develop a project proposal, including budget, that they would submit centrally for review, decision-making on what can be supported and what would be advanced immediately. Recognizing that this is has a 4 to 5 year horizon if you look out to 2030. So we're not trying to accomplish everything in the next 6 months, but we will anticipate having proposals and project plans and timelines built out for those 4 to 5 years as we get through this semester and into the summer. You can go to the next slide, and I want to comment on measuring success just briefly. So last week at the Board of Regents meeting, they did approve the how we're going to measure success, or what we're going to focus on. And that information will be made available. It's in the board docket, but it'll also be included in our website update in the coming weeks. And really the question we tried to answer on this is what's going to be different at the University of Minnesota if we look out 5 years, and they really fall into different categories, and I want to be clear on these. We are still working on identifying what some of our baseline data is, but you're going to see quantitative change, and it could be change in behavior, knowledge learned, skills gained. It could be that we initiate or launch an initiative, and you've seen a little bit about those, whether it be through AI, workforce development, initiatives in One Health. It could vary across the focus areas, but that could be our accomplishment. It may be about investments made, and you see that especially in Imperative 5, and also facilities completed or started. And so those are the types of things that we would look to share as success over the next 5 years, working towards updates on progress on all of those focus areas. And in the document that we'll share with success measures, you see outputs and milestones that we'll want to report on. You can advance to the next slide, Amber. To finish up, I just want to stress a couple of things. On the website that you have the link to, there's an implementation section. If you scroll all the way down in the implementation section, you'll see where we've started to populate links for our campus work. So each of the campuses now also have identified and convened planning teams, or will be, that will look at their set of priorities within the parameters of the strategic roadmap and how do they ladder up to those 5 imperatives and 20 focus areas. So if you look at those links, you'll see the Twin Cities has a website for their leadership of their strategic roadmap for the Twin Cities campus. Duluth is well underway, Rochester is well underway, and then Crookston and Morris are getting started or in process of that. All of those will begin to be seen, I would anticipate, over the summer. And at the same time, colleges are engaged in their planning processes. Some had completed plans right at about the same time that the university released its strategic roadmap. So now what they're doing is identifying how they ladder up to those 20 focus areas. And I'm sure many of you here are engaged, whether it be in the college level or the campus level. And then on the Twin Cities campus, those colleges, probably half of them or more are engaged in active planning that I know many of the faculty and staff and students and others will be involved. The key on all of that is that they have to ladder up to the strategic roadmap. Because it was mentioned earlier, this gives us our framework and set of priorities for us moving forward over the next 5 years. We get asked periodically about progress. Since it was just adopted in December, we are moving towards sharing some progress updates in the coming weeks, where you'll see initiatives that are being launched and or decisions made to support a variety of different initiatives. That'll come on our website. It'll come through the traditional channels of the university communication, whether it be through briefs, university-wide programs that may be scheduled. You'll hear updates on it. Campus communications from each of the chancellors or from the provost regarding what's happening with their individual campus plans, and obviously colleges through your deans and dean offices. And then obviously we continue to share highlights through Board of Regents presentations that are publicly available. So with that, Amber, I'll stop, and I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Amber, is there a process for questions here?
Yep, the queue will be as usual. It's linked in the agenda, and I believe Jacqueline is getting the QR code ready. Okay, first in line we have Penny Edgell.
Thanks so much, and thanks for getting us the slides ahead of time. I followed one of the links in the slides to a document that outlines your various strategic initiatives and identifies specific implementation ideas for those. And some of them have centrally to do with the curriculum. So create problem-based solution-generating academic programs and classes, expanding interdisciplinary learning, thinking, and teaching, building a comprehensive online learning hub to serve all students, lead in AI innovation in teaching and learning, et cetera, right? So my question for you is a very simple one. The tenure code gives the faculty of the university the final control of all curricular matters in terms of the content of the curriculum. And so my question for you is, what is the concrete and specific plan to involve the faculty governance channels that we already have in place for curriculum development and approval as you roll out these strategic plan initiatives? What is the plan either for consultation or for involving those bodies in implementation? And very specifically, I want an answer on whether or not these are viewed as simply changes in modality that the faculty would not have to approve, because I see every single one of those as substantive. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Penny. I think that's a terrific question. So if I could back up and give a sense of where some of the planning is. So each of the action teams are just now coming together, right, to work on how they operationalize those key early actions. At some point in the next number of weeks, they'll submit some sort of progress update on where they are. because what we don't have a good sense yet, because the teams have to come together and work, is exactly how they'll operationalize those plans. And I think as we see those initial progress updates, we'll be able to then ensure where it's most appropriate that the governance structure of the institution is engaged. And I want to be clear that we'll also be very mindful of it's not the committee's responsibility to set specific curriculum and decide what's taught. So we'll also be watching for that. But there will be an opportunity as appropriate for the governance of the institution to be engaged. I just don't know where that is at this point in time because the committees are just getting started.
I appreciate that. And since I didn't use my 2 minutes, can I just ask a quick follow-up, which is, okay, so I guess I'm really asking more about the commitment and specifically about whether some of these things like the development of a learning hub or the incorporation of AI into the curriculum, it's very clear that that's something that is in the strategic plan is something that all instructional faculty, staff, students are familiar with and use. Is that understood as a modality change that doesn't require university governance structure, faculty input, or is it viewed as content and substantive?
So, Ryan, we're going to call a friend here. So I'm going to ask the provost to answer this question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Penny. So I agree with Ryan. Nothing's going to change faculty oversight on the curriculum. Absolutely. On the question of is something like AI a modality change or something like the online hub a modality, it's all in the details of it, I would say, of course. But just to give you an example of the kind of thing we're thinking about, and remember, these recommendations came up through the process and were from broad groups of folks. But our Center for Innovation and Education is working on doing things like providing resources and guidance for faculty and instructors who are thinking about either how they might use AI in appropriate ways in assignments or how AI might, for instance, change the kinds of jobs students are going to. And so should we be thinking about changes in the curriculum as a result? So I think it's much more in that spirit than in anything else. I hope that's helpful.
Next question. Any more questions for Ryan?
Yep. Next up, we have Tim Beebe.
Hello. Thank you for the chance to ask the question today. A lot of effort has gone into this. This is a question about implementation and accountability, particular local accountability. In the past, during the compact process, deans had to fill out their activities in every element of the strategic plan that was in place in the past administration. I was kind of wondering if that's the plan here, is that at the school level, deans will have to chart activities and their plans and resources associated with that as part of this, to kind of indexed their work and their prioritization off of this larger architecture.
Let me make a general comment, and then the folks engaged in some of the compact work and budgeting may want to add on to it. I think generally speaking, the expectation is that there will be reporting against these 20 focus areas from the colleges. Now, how that aligns on the budget side, I would let Gretchen or the president comment on that.
Why don't you speak to the budget and I can talk about dean evaluation and
yeah, I think I mean, first of all, the strategic plan isn't getting enacted centrally, right? It will be enacted when all of the colleges and campuses participate in it. And collectively, the Board of Regents expects the university to move ahead, and that will happen when colleges and campuses are all making measurable progress towards those goals, right? So in terms of the budget process, certainly as I kind of was saying earlier a little bit, there's an expectation that the schools are going to have their own plan the schools will have that plan approved by the centrally, so that we know what they're doing to be able to make progress towards the university goals. And then I imagine at that point, they will need to be moving their budget in a way that will help facilitate them towards those goals. I don't recall right now, I'd have to get back to you in terms of whether that's in the current budget compact process or not. But I would imagine going forward, there will be, as there has been before, as you are asking for things in that compact process, it would be typical, as you noted, Penny, to be having justification in terms of how that moves people towards a budget process. I don't know if that's in there or not this year. I would have to ask the finance team. And then do you want to speak?
Sure. So I can tell you that it is only softly part of the budget compact process for this year, because several of the schools and colleges are still figuring out how their own strategic goals align, right? They're still in the process of developing this. It will become, I think, a bigger part of that process next year. And I think it should be, right? I mean, we want people to be thinking about budgets in terms of what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Where are your strengths and how you're trying to enhance them, to use these strategic plans as a kind of a decision guide, particularly when they come from engagement with the broader community about the things that matter most, right? And I can certainly tell you in my own work and evaluation with the deans, it will be along the same lines of what's the process by which you've determined these larger goals, and they need to be community engaged processes, and how are you getting there, and how can we help you to get there?
And I'll add into that, and remember, the way each school or campus lives out the strategic plan is individual to that school and campus, and designed, as the provost mentioned, ideally with the school and campus community participating in what that looks like. You know, living out the strategic plan looks different for extension than it does for dentistry, and how they move ahead those goals across the university.
So that's a little bit different than the past. So that's good to hear, though. It's a little more tailoring. It would be welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Shireen Sabet.
Hi, thank you. My question is for VP Schmeezing. Thank you. I just am wondering if there is an alternative process for nomination to the action teams that are being formulated for the action teams. Sorry, I didn't say that quite well. But aside from the team formations coming from management, is there an alternative process for nomination for people who are thought to be experts in the field, especially
Sure.
any of the imperatives that are included in the strategic plan?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we, to clarify, we didn't mandate any action team members centrally. What we did was identify action team leads or co-leads, and then we asked them through their expertise, professional judgment, networks and contacts, and who they've worked with, where they know the expertise and strength is broadly at the university, to identify individuals to serve on those action teams. Two important things: we did ask them to keep them manageable so that work could be done. And then the second part of that is, we know several of the action teams are identifying additional people, expertise to help inform their work. And what I would suggest individuals do is to connect with the action team lead or co-leads for those, and express whatever interest or expertise you may have that can contribute to it. And I'm leaving the formation of the action teams to those action team leads. But they've worked with their colleagues and others to identify who should be or who could be on them. Recognizing, I want to acknowledge, there's great and expansive expertise across the institution. And in some cases, our action teams would literally be hundreds of people, which is not feasible. So I would encourage you, I think we've had the conversation to encourage you to reach out to the action team leads or co-leads to express that interest.
If I may add also to that, Sharina, thank you for the thoughtful question. Those action teams are just one expression of, at the Central University level, there are action teams also being set up, around how the Twin Cities moves ahead. And I'm not sure what campus you're from, but from each campus, there are also schools are setting up their own planning. So within your school, there likely are committees and action teams within that school focused on how that school is going to achieve that particular goal. So there's multiple. The ones that Ryan are talking about are simply some early action teams at the that are across university, with tons of other work happening below. So if you have knowledge and expertise, I encourage you to try to get involved also at the campus level or at your school level, because and the school and campus level, some of that work is just forming now.
Thank you. Is there a list of the leads that we could follow up on and see who?
Yeah, it's on the website in the implementation section.
All right, thank you.
Next in the queue is Ava Von Dassau.
Thank you, Amber. This question is for Ryan Schmiesing. What we see in this document is essentially a series of new endeavors, some of which correspond to existing ones and some of which may enhance or intensify them, that are layered onto existing academic programs that are suffering cuts, which raises the question, how will anybody afford to staff any realistic new endeavors? For example, one of the items is strong tribal partnerships, recognizing the sovereignty of tribal nations and the new home for the American Indian Studies Department and so forth. Well, so realizing a goal related to that item would seem to mean, for example, providing more faculty lines to the Department of American Indian Studies and supporting their graduate program and the teaching of Ojibwe and Dakota languages in particular, and the instruction in the political and cultural history of the tribal nations. So my question is whether this strategic plan will actually entail new budgetary resources for academic programs which are currently suffering cuts, and more cuts are promised, more cuts to faculty positions and programs.
So I can in part, Eva, thanks for the question. I can in part answer the question only from the perspective of where my work is focused right now, right? So again, I will go back to the fact that the action teams have to do their work and have to identify a proposal to put forth that'll outline their proposed actions and potential associated budget with that. Depending on what that is, there could be some central investment in that. But again, if you look across campuses and colleges and departments, there is also significant decision-making about budgets and priorities that'll happen there. But I can't speak directly to, will there be an exact investment in faculty lines? I don't know that. And in part that those decisions are in the college level and campus level.
And Provost Ritter, do you want to chime in also?
I love your example, right? I mean, our excellence in this area is extraordinary. From the first American Indian Studies program, one of the first PhD programs, and it's not just Twin Cities, right? And it's not just College of Liberal Arts. It's across this campus. It is each of the other campuses is doing things in this space as well. I believe it is likely that we are the strongest public university in this area. I would like to see that lifted up and celebrated more. I think the kind of expression that you suggest, which is more investment, honoring that strength, is a great suggestion. Brian's also right that it's not, we don't have a lot of new money here. So part of this is making internal decisions within communities about where do we make investments and where do we have the greatest impact. But I think that's a terrific area to be advocating for.
Do we have time for more questions, Amber?
We do. And next we have Chase Krug.
Hi, this is for Ryan. I have a question regarding the presence or absence of students on these working groups. Can you talk about, are there students on these working groups, and how are you engaging the RSGAs for the Twin Cities working group?
So let me speak broadly to the action teams, and if the provost may comment on the Twin Cities specifically. Again, I can't answer Chase specifically if there are graduate students. We'd have to go back and look. But again, we've left that to the action team leads. If there are areas that should have more engagement from students, graduate students at the system level, we're happy to have those conversations. And if you want to connect with me, we can do that. But I don't have specific where they are or aren't yet. And Gretchen, I don't know if you have any comments on the Twin Cities planning specifically.
It's been differential by area. So the areas that have been more student specific, I think have been more intentional in their inclusion of student voices in that. Areas like the operations area, probably less so, Chase. But I would agree with Ryan, that if there are things you see that you think would merit more consideration of the perspective of you or your peers, please bring it forward to us.
I'll give you an example of where I know there is some, Chase. For example, we have a focus area around student mental health and student food insecurity. Student Life is leading that part of the imperative. And I know that they've done a fair amount of work to engage student voices in what really matters there and how to move it ahead. So again, early days on those things, but there certainly is student involvement in different areas. And I expect that there will continue to be as the reach out and the planning happens. Thank you.
If I can just use the rest of my time. If there are students on there, it'd be nice to have a list of them and send it to the RSGAs. Right now, the website just has names. It doesn't say affiliation or what they are. So it'd be helpful to have that information so we can contact that individual on that committee. So thanks.
Also, if they're not on the committee, doesn't necessarily mean that those committees aren't reaching out and getting other student input. So there's both of those things, but I hear you. It's a really good suggestion. Thank you, Chase. Amber?
I'm not seeing anyone else in the queue right now.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, Ryan, thank you so much for that update. I know we'll be having a lot more updates and conversations here, and I'm really excited. I'm most excited to see the creativity coming out of schools and departments and units in how they're bringing these aspects to life that the community has said are the direction we should be going in. So there's a lot of joy in seeing the innovation that is out there across the university. It's a real strength. Item 14 concerns the role of the Senate office. I'll turn it over to Lori Cooperstole, Director of the Senate office, and Amber Bakke, Senior Associate Director and Operations Coordinator.
Thank you, President Cunningham. So good afternoon, everyone. As the Director of the University Senate Office, I am responsible for the effective oversight, direction, and performance of our office, which supports the work of more than 1,000 faculty, staff, and students who are participating in shared governance across the university system. The University of Minnesota, as you know, has a long and rich tradition of shared governance, going all the way back to 1912. Our system remains a highly regarded model among our peer institutions in the Big Ten Academic Alliance, especially for the inclusion of not only faculty and students in shared governance, but P&A and civil service as well. In the University Senate office, we work closely with faculty, staff, students, and administrators to provide guidance and ensure the effectiveness and efficiency of shared governance. We sometimes get asked by those who have not served as committee chairs or otherwise work closely with our office about the role that Senate associates play in shared governance. So we appreciate just having a few minutes on the agenda today to share some information with you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Senior Senate Associate and Operations Coordinator. And you may note that while not intended, polka dots are a fan. We're fans of polka dots in the Senate office. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Lori. Yeah, we didn't plan to dress alike today, but it happens sometimes. Thanks again. Like Lori said, we appreciate having this little bit of time. And like Lori said, we just figured, actually there's been some, lack of clarity around our roles. And if people haven't worked closely with us as committee chairs or otherwise, you just might not know. So now, I'll tell you, so now you will. So a good way to think about what we do is to think about the staff that your U.S. legislators have. So as you all know, of course, your senators and representatives have staff, and U.S. Senate committees also have staff to do things like research, advise on policy, do help draft legislation, advise on strategy. Things like that, in addition to, of course, like scheduling and taking minutes and running the Zoom or running the technology. So that is just kind of a way to think about what we do. Notable exception, there's 5 of us, 6 of us, well, 5 of us who do this work, and so we all do this work for multiple committees. We don't have a separate person to do each thing, unfortunately, though that would be lovely. And just our mission statement, if you haven't seen this before, it's pretty simple. It's just to facilitate the successful operation of the governance system by providing professional support and guidance to University Senate governance bodies and their committees. So this is something that puts us in kind of a unique position. We have to, unlike your Senate and House representatives and their staff, we are nonpartisan. Not that there's like really parties in University Senate governance, but we do have to maintain kind of this neutral, no person's land in order to support our mission, because we really need everybody to know that they can come to us and to so that we can provide that guidance. So we take that really seriously. That is the only way we can accomplish our mission, and we care about it. So just a couple of things here. So these are quotes from a variety of FCC minutes over the years. There are more examples of quotes like this that mostly having to do with the BTAA Academic Alliance Shared Governance Leaders Conference that takes place every November. It used to be the CIC conference. And every time somebody comes back from one of those conferences, we hear the same kind of comments about how the University of Minnesota governance system is kind of a leader in the area, is kind of highly regarded amongst our peers. They really think we have good processes in place and stuff. And certainly I would never claim that that's solely because of the Senate office. Of course not. Everyone contributes to that. But I do have to imagine that having, a dedicated staff to offload things from committee chairs, where at other institutions, committee chairs might be sending out the agendas and taking minutes and stuff, that helps them focus on things that are kind of bigger picture.
Was it not important to him to move on?
As well as we are kind of the keepers of these good processes that are being talked about in these quotes. And so that is the way that we support the governance system, by kind of providing that continuity and guidance with regard to the processes and stuff. I'll also just note that the processes and advice that we give they weren't just pulled out of, the air somewhere. They are really founded in kind of the scholarly research and theory on what constitutes effective governance and what practices support that. So I've been doing lots of fun reading in that area. I'm kind of nerding out on it recently. So if any of you want to read some really fun articles, let me know. I can send them to you. So that's that. For those of you who are interested in kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of what we do, I don't want to get into a lot of detail about the day-to-day things that we do here, but I have provided in the docket our job descriptions, and there's a handy chart of like things that are required by the bylaws and who does those kind of according to the bylaws and who does them in practice. So these are also, informative things if you want to take a look at those another time. And as always, we are always here and happy to answer questions at any time. So if you have questions, do feel free to reach out. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for a question or two. Amber, please call in the first speaker.
I got to get my other tab open now. Doesn't look like we have any at the moment. We'll see if one comes in.
Fortunately, they also know where to find you, so we don't have
Yes,
any.
absolutely. You all have my email address. I'm not seeing anything come in.
We can follow up with Amber. Thank you for that information. Item 15 concerns policy history at the university and is presented for information. Item 16 concerns a perspective on the theory and practice of academic governance and is presented for information. Item 17 is old business, of which there is none. Item 18 concerns new business. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? I see a hand. Karen Sue.
Yes, thank you. I note that we have 40 minutes to discuss the strategic plans and 5 minutes to ask questions about the report on institutional speech. I make a motion noting the irony of imposing such constraints on speech regarding speech that we add a new, we amend the agenda to create another business item to ask more questions of the provost.
Second.
It's a legitimate motion, but requires 2/3 to amend the agenda.
Okay, so a legitimate motion that requires 2/3 to amend the agenda. I guess what we need to do then is to initiate a poll.
Yep.
Amber,
Can we do that?
Can we do that?
Just real quick.
Yes, give me 1 second to finish making it.
There were quite a few people still in the queue.
There were. We're also kind of.
Thank you. The agenda is preset with the time for questions before for the provost, regardless of the topic, and we actually can't see the queue. So, we're simply following the agenda, but I appreciate the motion. Let's see what the poll says.
My poll is doing something weird. Okay. There we go.
Our time. That's the time.
10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call.
Usually put an amount of time in here.
That motion carries with 122 ayes and 22 nays, 85%.
Can I decide?
Yeah, so Amber, we need to pick an amount of time for this. So it's typical to extend this by.
There's 2 to 15 minutes in the agenda for this item.
2 to 15 minutes.
This meeting was due to end at 4:15, so that would
So
work.
why don't we extend the time for 10 minutes in the middle of that, and let's proceed, given the vote.
All right, let me get back to the queue. So we can start with the people who already were in line, assuming that's okay. So we left off with Michael Galope.
Hi, Provost Ritter. Thanks for taking this extra time. I think we can all agree this issue is very serious, very complex. It cuts right to the core of the fundamental rights of faculty, students, and staff. I was in the FCC meeting earlier today. So spoiler alert, I have seen sort of the policy, but it was only given to us on a shared screen. So problem number one is, why don't we have the FAQ to be able to review in shared governance? That should be a document that I think circulates with the agenda. I'm really interested in rebuilding trust here. I mean, we've had a history of damaged trust, but if we don't have any ability to read this, how could we have a discussion of an FAQ? We have to just simply go on your report. I will just give people in the minute that I have grave concerns about what I saw. Very briefly, what would trigger a review of any institutional statement is a complaint from an outside entity, which incentivizes complaints. There's no real role for disclaimers to be able to clarify that something is not institutional speech. There is a whole range of broad and vague language. The two categories of broad language and vague language that are problematic are what counts as political. We're not simply talking about advocacy for campaigns. We're talking about what is political or partisan, which is highly open to debate. And then you have the question of what qualifies as expertise. There's also the question of due process. So people who have had statements taken down or investigated themselves would not be able to appeal to any committee of shared governance or academic and freedom and tenure committee. I would call it, frankly, a censorship committee that has been proposed. That committee looks like it is appointed by the provost and is not elected as part of shared governance. I think that while I agree that centers and institutes have special obligations to engage in public engagement, there are also many departments that are doing that as well. And that's another thing that's missing. So, but without the statement, we can't really have that discussion. So could that be distributed, and could there be a pause on implementing it until we can review and discuss
I
it?
hear the questions you've asked so far. So now let's give the provost a chance to answer.
So thank you for the question, Michael, and thank you for the additional time. As I said earlier, I certainly don't see this as an endpoint to engagement, and I think it should be acknowledged that I have made myself available for engagement whenever asked, and will continue to do so, because I do agree that the discussion helps us to get to better places. And I believe that building trust and collaboration is critically important for us, especially given the times that we're in. A couple of things to note. One, my intent today wasn't to do anything other than introduce to you something that was coming. And as I said, both in the FCC and in my comments today, we're releasing the FAQs either later today or tomorrow. And I'm more than happy to, in whatever forum, continue to discuss that. So that's one. Secondly, this is not a policy. It is a guideline on the implementation of the region's resolution. And it was developed because of the concerns and questions we were getting. And it seeks to address specifically what some of those were around, what constitutes an institutional statement? What are the protections for academic freedom? What about the role of centers and institutes, et cetera? So that's what's in there, and it's a response to the things that we were hearing. In terms of your comment that what tees this up is a complaint from an outside entity, that is not what is in the FAQs. What is in the FAQs is a comment that says, how does an issue around this come up for review? It simply says, basically, we're not going out looking for anything. If a complaint comes to us, we will consider it. Not an external complaint, a complaint. And we get complaints on various things all the time, internally and externally. And the first thing we do is we take a look to see, is this someone's protected area of academic freedom? And if we can confirm that, that's the end of the story. And that happens frequently. And then in terms of some of the big issues that you outlined, which we of course spent quite a bit of time talking about earlier in the FCC meeting as well, yes, all of these issues are important issues. What constitutes expertise? What constitutes political engagement? That one's actually more defined legally and otherwise. How do we determine whether or not something extends beyond research findings? That, I think, benefits a great deal from broader conversation and deliberation, which is one of the reasons that there's a proposed advisory committee in here and an invitation through shared governance on constituting that committee. Thank you.
Next question.
Next on the list is Marvis White.
Hi, yes, thank you so much again for extending the time here. I just wanted to go back to a point that you brought up earlier where you said that the university was providing support for students, things like transportation from and to classes or just safe places to be. And I just wanted to fact check that. I haven't seen that kind of resource on campus. I'd like to know where those resources are. And where this kind of community engagement that you mentioned earlier about our neighbors and everything, bringing groceries to our other neighbors that are affected by ICE. I don't see the university doing that. Where is that happening?
So it's happening quite a bit, Marvis, and thank you for the question. We have spent many tens of thousands of dollars on additional transportation for folks, anybody who's requested it in this context. We also have a university provided transportation system. What is it called? Gopher Chauffeur,
which we extended, I
which
believe.
we've extended the hours, we've increased the capacity of it. So that's in addition to helping to provide funding for things like Ubers and so forth. We are doing delivery of food centrally from the university. We've also increased the capacity of all of our food pantries. There are several on the Twin Cities campus. They are on every other campus as well. And a lot of student groups have gotten involved in doing this work. We've gotten reports and commentaries on that through both the schools and colleges as well as through student affairs. I'd be happy if you want to kind of share some more specific follow-up information on that.
Yes.
I would also.
I just had a follow.
Sure. Yeah.
I just had a follow-up question to that. So I'm on the Twin Cities campus. I spend a majority of my time on the St. Paul campus. I am not seeing the promotion of these services. I'm not seeing this happening. And I just want to know, like, is this happening on the St. Paul campus to begin with? And how can we make it more accessible to our students on this campus?
So Marvis, the way it's been working has been through individual consultation. Students that have a need, we have encouraged to reach out directly to their advisor and to their teachers, their faculty, and to the school. And then wherever possible, what I've seen is a tremendous outreach from both the leadership of the schools as well as the administrative operations groups broadly to try to find a solution. There's not a website where you're going to go to and click and say, you know, I'm having a problem right now on this and please give me a ride. It's going to be, if you need additional resources during this time, then we're asking you to reach out individually, and that individual reach out is then being met with as much possible support as we can provide to try to help people get through this difficult time. And I know of schools providing with that individual Uber rides, providing all kinds of things, not with donor support, I might add, and emergency funds through, again, a wide variety of mechanisms. So it is happening, and it's happening hopefully for the probably not for everybody who has needed it, who has maybe not reached out, but we have seen a tremendous outpouring and a lot of creativity in how that gets delivered. Thank you. Next question.
Thank you.
Next up, Michael Wilson.
You're on mute, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to ask this question. And I have been contacted by colleagues in my department who were concerned about the mandated return to in-person teaching, and they we've talked a lot about students, and this is a faculty member who was concerned about their own safety as someone who has been felt unsafe leaving their home throughout this time. And I hear continued reports of ICE activity, even in St. Anthony Park, close to the St. Paul campus. So my question is, what factors went into the decision to return to mandatory in-person teaching, and how will we know, how does the university assess when it's really safe to do so?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I do know that both faculty members and staff have had concerns and issues as well in this period, and have had a lot of anxieties and a lot of pressures happening in their neighborhoods, sometimes within their families, and so on. In terms of what were the factors and how do we think about this, there were several things. One was indications that we were getting from reports from each of the schools and colleges, as well as centrally, of not a large number of folks asking for help. Another was concerns about the impact of ongoing remote on both learning and social and emotional well-being for many folks. And this is something that we also heard from our students. Another factor was issues about accreditation, issues about the visas of our international students, among other things that required us to be in the modality that we listed in. And we also spent a lot of time talking to our safety personnel to help get information about overall conditions, including the fact that we had not had on the campus itself any direct activity. That said, we know you're absolutely right that there is continued activity, not just within the Twin Cities, but within our state. And I don't know that we know when that will fully end. And one of the ways that I think we all thought about it and discussed it, and we did a lot of that over these last few weeks, is in a period like this, how do we respond? In some ways, we respond by meeting our mission. If we don't know when we'll be fully out of something like this, we work as hard as we can to help people be safe, to support them in every way we can. And I think the way that we make a contribution to have the society that we want is through education, is through scholarship, is through public outreach.
Thank you, Michael. We have time for one more question.
Next up is Hope Dixon. Hope Nixon.
Hope, do you have a question? They might have left.
Maybe they had to leave. In that case, next up would be Chase Krug.
Hi, Provost Ritter. I have a question regarding the graduate school dean search. The Council of Graduate Students doesn't have a committee representative on that committee. Can there be one? The RSGA works really closely with the graduate school, and I think it's important that they have a voice on that committee.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chase. We do have student representation on the committee. We went through a process to identify that. I'm sorry that it is not a member of COGS specifically, but my understanding is that there will be a specific session with COGS representatives to talk about their concerns and their interests with regard to this search. And of course, folks will be invited for interviews with the candidates.
Yeah, I think one of the most important issues is that as elective shared governance, a part of that committee would be on there making sure that we have a working relationship with that individual. I think when we're doing these search committees, it's very important that there is actually an elected representative from the student body on those committees. So I would like you to take that into account as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I think that concludes this item. I think I'll go to this if we have no further business at this time. See any further business? Seeing no further business, we will conclude the meeting and be adjourned. The Faculty Senate meeting will convene at 4:15. This makes us on time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Do we have to leave?
Thank you.
Stays on. Okay. We'll give people a minute here to regroup. All right, with that, I'll now call the Faculty Senate to order. Item 2 concerns administrative responses to the University Senate action is presented for information. Item 3 is questions for the president. I'll ask Amber to call on the first person.
I'm looking to see if anyone is putting their name in line at this time. David Reddish.
Thank you. I actually want to follow up on something that was brought up in the University Senate. Is that permitted?
Sure, I'm open for questions, David.
Thanks. I want to follow up on the question, the answers you were giving about to the student who was asking about the resources. And it sounds like the resources that are being put forward are all making a very strong assumption that somebody will feel comfortable, appropriate, empowered to contact university leadership rather than doing advertising. And I mean, although I have actually seen the food pantry, for example, in Kaufman as I go by, I haven't seen advertising for it. And I'm wondering, is there actually plans? Are you doing advertising? And I just think that that's something that could be brought up and could be pushed a little more.
Thanks, David. Specifically on the food pantry, we've put out a number of messages broadly. I do fully understand and respect that people don't always read my emails with the utmost respect for people's inbox. But we've put out any number of leadership messages, both myself and the provost and our head of operations on resources that are available, including food pantry hours and times. We've extensively advertised in any number of ways the extended hours of the food pantry. And so some of that happens not just through our emails, but through the web page that we have up on the responses that we have going on, et cetera. I also want to be really clear. Nobody expects a student to reach out to the provost or president what we ask is they reach out to their faculty and their school. And we do hope that students will reach out to those that are working most closely with them when they need something. I mean, that is the best process that we have. But some of our broader resources have certainly been widely advertised in any number of emails that we put out around resources for students and really for the community during what has been an incredibly difficult time.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to, it looks like I still have a little bit of time. I want to point out that in my experience, the students that I would honestly be most likely to be worried about are the ones least likely to be willing to come talk to faculty. And so if there were processes where a student, particularly undergraduates, I mean, yes, graduate students have immediate advisors, but in my experience, there are many, many undergraduates. I had an undergraduate who was a senior show up in my office and say, oh, I didn't realize office hours were when you wanted me to talk to you, right? So there are, I now call them student hours, but there's an assumption of connecting to faculty. And so I just would suggest that if there were a website where students could ask for help and such, and some sort of making that easier, I just think that would help connect to the community.
So I'll add, we asked, so the best process for that, as you rightly point out, David, is not students reaching out to central administration. So we asked each school to set up that process by which students could contact them and go through that process. So your school, the schools may be uneven in that, but that has been up to the school level to set up exactly the kind of process that you suggest for exactly the reasons that you suggested. And I do know that many schools have indeed done that. Again, we're a big decentralized place and there's different processes across different places, but that has been the intent, knowing that it is indeed imperfect. But thank you, and thank you for caring about your students in this time. Next question.
Next up is Ava Von Dasso.
Thank you, Amber. I want to return to the issue of academic freedom, not only as it pertains to institutional speech, and remark that I agree with my colleague Michael Galoppi's assessment of the committee the provost describes as a censorship committee. The presumption seems to be that each person's academic freedom attaches only to that person's area of expertise. So I'd like to ask you, Rebecca Cunningham, what made you think that it was okay to violate the academic freedom of one of our colleagues and suppress her expressive speech and have University of Minnesota Police expel her from an event to which you invited her to perform?
Eva, thank you for the question. You know, on the prior component, I will have the provost chime in terms of academic freedom relating to individual academic expertise. But first, maybe let me answer your question at the higher level. You know, I think I'd like, first of all, to sort of step back with some humanity to the event for which we had for community belonging, for which came 36 hours after the tragic killing of Alex Preedy that we all saw and concerned so many people about the community. You know, so I want you to know, first of all, that the community administration cared enough, and the staff and the event staff that put that together that day cared enough that they worked, you know, the whole day Sunday, just a day after that terrible, tragic event, to try to put together an event that would help the community come together. So they did that, and they invited a faculty who cared equally. Also, let's think about the humanity to come together and find a time to have community belonging. So I'd like to just address this, first of all, in this spirit of humanity and good intent by all the people that were there, right? So, you know, with that, I was not involved in the exact component things that you're discussing there, but I do understand that there's a lot of passion, certainly on the faculty end. We also have staff who are working to try to pull off an event that they worked hard for the last day to pull on at the last minute to come together with a run of show, with expectations that they were having a performance happen with a certain particular mood and that somebody was invited to perform as a performer in that event. We can all disagree about how that went down, and I think we can all also know that I think there were good intentions all around by those folks, both the event staff and team, that were trying to, within those next few minutes, put on an event to help bring the community together that was going to be broadcast to 5,000 or 10,000 people, and a faculty who totally understandably was completely passionate about what she was feeling and about what she had in mind for that moment. And those ideas clearly were not consistent with each other. As I understand it, I think passions got quite high, volumes got quite high, an event was about to start. And with that, she was asked to step away from that particular moment. So, again, I think our administration has reached out multiple times to the faculty to express thanks, to try to contact her for, being willing to come that day. I wish all of that had, played out a little bit differently, but I just want to start with the intent of the good humanity by the people that were putting on the event that day, and the good humanity of the faculty who was going to come and try to perform music that day. And what we all meant to do, which I'd like to keep at kind of the highest level here, is we have an external event that was tragic and traumatic for our community. And what we need to do in this time is to come together in supporting that feeling, and how we work together, and pointing fingers right now about those components and trying to find higher meaning in staff trying to put on an event and a faculty with high emotions, I don't think is productive for our community right now, although I do appreciate there's a variety of opinions about it. So again, we've reached out to the individual faculty. I personally am most grateful that she was willing to come that day. We are all sorry that it didn't go exactly as planned. I am very grateful to our event staff also, and administration, who put on what I think is an event that I am told was very meaningful to thousands and thousands of people across our community. So with that, Eva, thank you for the question. Do you want to answer the individual?
Just the academic freedom is, of course, attached to academic expertise, which is different than freedom of expression, which is available to everyone.
Thank you for that. Next question, Amber.
Next up is Karen Sue Tosig.
Yeah, hi. This is a comment, and you're welcome to respond to it. It builds on what Ava was asking. It builds on what Michael Galope was talking about. I really appreciate the concern to rebuild trust. I feel like every time I hear Provost Ritter or President Cunningham open their mouth, they are stomping on that. It is so discouraging. I am so discouraged by where we are in this institution. When I hear you, and this is what I think is really important for you to hear, that when I hear you talk about institutional neutrality, as the child of a 1938 refugee immigrant from Prague, what I am hearing is the voices of German university provosts saying, we need to be neutral. Whether that is your intent or not, you need to understand that for some of us, that is what we're hearing. And we are not living in times where we should be neutral. You just talked about what happened to Pretty. We have just been talking about our students and faculty terror. To hear you talk about institutional neutrality is heartbreaking. It makes me embarrassed to be part of this institution. That is our leadership's discourse. I'm sorry. I believe that you don't intend that, but you need to know that that is what we are hearing. I have more to say. I'm just going to end it there. It is so deeply distressing.
So, Karen, I thank you for your passionate comments there. I know, Provost Ritter, do you want to?
Yeah, I understand that many people are feeling that way about this moment, and obviously you bring to that personal family history. I am a scholar of American democracy. I know about both progress and reversals in that. I think that the question that people are putting on the table, whether you know it or you see it or not, is a question I struggle with a lot. I don't believe we're in 1930s Germany. I do believe we have to ask the question. I do believe that there are times where you cannot maintain institutional neutrality. And I do think that now there is an important role that it plays. And for me, part of this is in the context of really deep political polarization. And if you look at what's happened in American politics over the last 30 years, that polarization has gotten worse and worse to the point where poll after poll tells you that we have rising tolerance for political violence, that we have rising hatred for anybody who is seen as representing a different point of view. So a lot of my politics and orientation to this comes from how do we get to a position where people can begin to hear each other and think about the common good of our communities. Because if we can't get to that, it's only going to get worse. That does not mean tolerating hatred. That does not mean tolerating things that are lies.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Karen, I do feel the passion that you have there, and I appreciate you expressing it. I want to encourage you to keep with the thought also that you believe that it's not our intent. Our intent is certainly to rebuild trust. And I know Provost Ritter and I are working deeply on that. I'll add a lot of the intent with the board policy on institution neutrality is to make sure that all voices on campus have the ability to be fully heard without a leadership voice prescribing how you all should be expressing yourself the most. And there's lots of room to disagree on that. And I know I find it's hardest to be neutral when it's a topic that I personally am very passionate about a particular side on. And so, but that stance on neutrality, it's as vigorous whether I agree with your position or whether I don't agree with your position. And it doesn't have anything to do with what I personally think or how I hope all of you are expressing all of yourself across the avenues for which you can appropriately use civic engagement and free speech. With that, we have to move on to the next item. But thank you so much for that discussion. I think these honest, open discussions are the way that we really make progress together, and I'll continue to look forward to that. Let's see. Item 4 concerns an update on work related to policy and project practice around contract faculty, lecturers, and teaching specialists. The Vice Provost of Academic Affairs, Beth Lewis, is here to present this item. Vice Provost Lewis, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Cunningham. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to be here today to talk about this issue. What we're going to do is just talk really briefly about the relevant policies, some of the work that's been done in these areas, around these faculty and PNA appointments, and then talk about the work that we're planning to do. So we want to keep this fairly brief so we have some time for discussion. In the docket, there was a one-pager that kind of outlines some of the issues. Oh, thanks, Amber. It's in the chat. You'll see the relevant policies that are listed there. The first one is the Board of Regents faculty tenure policy, which is relevant in this area, and then also our task force. The second one is the academic appointments with teaching functions. So what we want to talk about today is 2 of those appointments that are under the academic appointments with teaching functions. One is the term faculty, or otherwise called contract faculty, who do fall under the tenure code. And the other one is the academic professional staff who hold primary responsibilities for teaching. So these are lecturers and teaching specialists for purposes of today who do not fall under the tenure code. If you go up to that first link and you're able to click on section 3.4, that outlines what would be considered a contract faculty, which the criteria are. So what our goal really is to make sure that we're following policy. And right now we have an issue with right now of being somewhat out of compliance for the teaching faculty. If you look at section 3.4, there isn't a criteria here in the tenure code for teaching faculty. Most of these in the past have been clinical faculty and other types of criteria. But what has happened is that colleges have provided these teaching faculty positions, and then as a result, we have people in sometimes the same colleges, maybe even same departments, where they're doing the same job but with different titles. So we have people who might be a teaching assistant professor and then a lecturer, or a teaching associate professor and a senior lecturer, and they're doing the same things. And there are differences there. So we have lecturers only have 2 levels of promotion versus teaching faculty have 3 levels of promotion. So there's been a lot of work that's already been done with this, including, and I've listed in this, we list this in the docket as well, including the Term Faculty and Academic Professionals Senate Subcommittee report, who did a great job of outlining all the issues. So TFABs did that. So what we have done to try to resolve this issue and other issues surrounding contract faculty, lecturers, and teaching specialists is that Provost Ritter has charged a task force to look at, to help us in the response to the TFAB's recommendation and all the other work that's been done in this area leading up to this point. We just started last month with this committee work, and so we're just spending some time reviewing the policies and looking at our current job codes, and then we've started to put together a consultation plan. So we're going to consult with and do focus groups with teaching specialists, lecturers, and contract faculty to really better understand the issue. And we're hoping to be able to conclude our work by the end of the semester so that we can get back in line with policy, whether that mean changing policy or changing practice. We have incredibly hardworking contract faculty, lecturers, and teaching specialists, and we want to make sure that everybody is treated in an equitable manner and we're in the appropriate code while we're being in line with policy. And with that, Ola, did you have anything else to add before we open it up for questions?
No, just to mention again, as is clear from the background document, there's been a lot of work going back a long time, actually going back to the turn of the century in 1999. There was the Bales committee, which established the policy on academic appointments with teaching functions. And one of the issues that we need to address is that there exists this tension and conflict in our policies, right? One is we have existing teaching faculty positions. They are in PeopleSoft. On the other hand, Section 3.4, our tenure policy, suggests that those appointments cannot be used. So there's sort of a tension. There is a need to disentangle policies, and I think that that's been a big part of the charge for this committee. Also, from the work that has taken place over several years, certain patterns have emerged, right? Things like long-term contracts, path for promotion. You mentioned that. Many of our peer institutions have done just that, like a 3-ladder rank for lecturers and teaching specialists. That's also contained in the TFAB's report. I also think we should just acknowledge the ongoing work by the AF&T Task Force on Academic Freedom and Tenure, Academic Freedom for Term Faculty. So obviously, the issue around academic freedom and term faculty lecture is an important one. It's a little bit outside the scope of this working group, but it is not to suggest that it's not an important consideration.
Do we have time for another question?
Didn't start yet.
Sorry, that wasn't a question. I guess I'm proceeding to discussion.
First in line, I have Kathy Quick, but Kathy, I wasn't sure if you were in line for this topic or if it was from the president's question still.
No, I was in line from the previous discussion.
Okay. In that case, next is Anna Mosser.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I am a faculty senator. I am a teaching associate professor in the Department of Biology, Teaching, and Learning. Our department has been very successful in maintaining the teaching professor track, and we have just been told that we currently cannot hire any more teaching professors, or at least for the time being, although we are in desperate need of more people. We will have a difficult time recruiting people if they are not receiving the respect that they deserve as extremely qualified teaching faculty. We also need to have things in place like job security, academic freedom to be able to teach the truth in our classes. So I would like to hear a little bit more about how you are going to potentially erase the position of teaching professors and research professors potentially, and continue to reach the academic mission of our public university.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for some background in terms of how it's worked in your department. That's really helpful for us to hear. We'd love to have you in on the focus groups if we could, to get that insight, because that's exactly the kind of information that we need. We would like to know more about how it has been working in the different colleges. It varies quite a bit between which colleges are using it and which are not. And I think, the concerns about it right now, we're trying to abide with policy, and as we finish our work in this task force, there has not been any decisions made in terms of what we're going to be doing going forward. I can tell you, when I was a department chair, I remember trying to hire a lecturer, and I offered the position, and he had wanted a teaching assistant professor title. That was a really big deal to him, and he turned us down. So I completely understand where you're coming from for this. So we're trying to figure out exactly how we can move forward with this, while understanding, the importance of the title, the 3 levels of promotion, the rights to be in governance in the departments. There's a lot of issues that go into this. And so we are considering all of that, and we want to continue to hear more stories like that as we sort of move forward. But no decisions have been made at this point in terms of what we're going to do going forward.
Okay, thanks.
Next in the queue is Shanna Waters.
Thank you for your talk. I'm a teaching professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. And when I came here, at that time, there was no such thing in my department. And we had the ability to transfer over. And I think it's made a huge difference. Just like my colleague had said, we actually can hire better, because people do believe that titles matter. I'm always amazed how people say titles don't matter until it's you. And then they do matter. So I want to know, has any dean at this time been told you cannot hire new teaching faculty?
So according to policy, there is a form that has to be submitted to our office. That there has been more compliance with turning in that form. So when that form comes in, if it doesn't meet the criteria, we are communicating back to the departments at this colleges at this time to say that that we can't approve this until we have some more clarity.
Can I interject, Beth? So you're telling me that the deans have been told to no longer hire teaching faculty. Is that correct?
It's a yes or no. It's been
a yes or
communicated.
no?
Yeah. I mean, it's been, my understanding is yes, it has been discussed. We have discussed the policy here and there. Along, this has been kind of an ongoing issue. But for sure, as the forms have come in, yes, the colleges have been informed.
So
of
they've
it.
been told no. Okay. And just out of curiosity, given that next month we're going to be talking about the AF&T report, part of me feels like this is kind of an end run around the AF&T report. How are you using that report to inform your own work when there was a breadth of recommendations about why teaching faculty should be able to get tenure, and there's nothing in the actual tenure code that says that. So that's my question. Have you used it? Thank you.
I may use
Yeah,
it. Beth, if I can
Go ahead. Yep.
back up here just a moment, because I want to make sure we're conveying a full part of accurate information. Provost Ritter, do you want to comment about if it's denied because it doesn't meet a policy, not because because it's a central decision?
We're not telling deans or schools and colleges not to hire teaching faculty. We are in relation to shared governance being asked to conform to the policies, right? And I think one of the important questions to consider here is, should we be changing some of these policies? I agree with the comments about the importance of titles and the duration of contracts and governance and respect. And I think that could point us in the direction of some changes that need to happen in the policies.
So I just want to respond. My question was, if you're not approving any of them, then you're telling the departments no. It's a yes or no response.
Beth, do you want to clarify? It's not that we're not approving.
Well, so if the form, we're approving contract, yes, we're approving contract faculty, but if the form comes in and does not meet the criteria in section 3.4, they are being denied. That's a clearer answer to that.
And I think it's important to remember it was in response to a resolution that was passed by the Faculty Senate in 2023 that called for strict adherence with Section 3 of the tenure policy. So that is justification annually of any contract faculty who has been in any position, contract faculty position for more than 7 years, as well as the restrictions on appointments. I think it's a very fair point that you brought up, that this has not happened in the past. The Faculty Senate called the administration on this, and of course that's why we're looking at trying to disentangle these policies and these conflicting policies.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Shauna. It sounds like there's some work to be done there. Do we have time for one more question?
Next up is Jasmine Fu.
Hi, thank you. I'm a faculty member in the math department, where we have many colleagues who are in the roles of contract faculty, lecturers, and teaching specialists. And so we really do understand the policy conflicts and the tensions that you're describing. And I'm interested in hearing the ideas and solutions proposed by this task force. My question is, can you give me an idea of the constituencies represented on the task force?
So we're not to the point of having recommendations or solutions at this point. We're still collecting data. We have a variety of campuses represented, variety of faculty governance is represented as well. And in the past, we've had many committees that have conformed this committee in terms of that have included teaching specialists, lecturers. And we have a plan to do several focus groups with lecturers and teaching specialists. And we really wanted to focus on getting as many voices heard as possible from those groups of individuals. And so we wanted to have multiple people sort of facilitating these different listening sessions that we're going to have.
Thank you. Next question.
Next question is Tom Hegbloom.
Probably the last question, I think, if we have time here. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is Tom Hegbloom. I'm a faculty senator from CCAPS. And maybe not as much a question, but a piece of feedback in an area where there's opportunity for discussion and participation in these committees. CCAPS is a college that does not have tenure lines. We don't have a lot of full-time faculty, but there are a couple programs with faculty representation. My program is one of them. And the highest that we can be ranked is as a lecturer. You know, as people with terminal degrees, we do clinical work in our fields. This is an area where recruitment, retention, respect is just diminished and really not present. And especially like as a college that is focused on professional studies, it would be really lovely to have an opportunity to, you know, achieve a higher rank, to do service within the field. I don't have an opportunity to do any type of scholarship whatsoever, but that's part of my role as a counselor, educator, and supervisor. So hopefully there's opportunity to have greater discussion about how to have greater equity between colleges in this so that, you know, we can contribute to our fields in the way that we aspire to do.
Great. Thank you for that. Do you want to be in our focus group? Can I put your name down?
100%.
Okay, great. I've got your name down. Thank you. That's really helpful to have that feedback. I appreciate it.
Or just given that was so short.
Oh, we do have time for one more because you guys were so efficient with that.
All right. Next up is Jerry Cohen.
Jerry Cohen. I'm Vice Chair of the Senate. I just wanted to bring up the one point that was kind of ignored in this is that University of Minnesota Tenure Code is the defining document for academic freedom at the University of Minnesota. And if a teaching faculty member is not covered under 3.4, they're also not covered under number 1, which is academic freedom. And so one of the driving forces of having our teaching faculty covered under 3.4 is to have them covered also under number 1. And so that's, I think it's a really important consideration of that. And then I think the other thing that I just like to bring up is that the Regents policy limits the number of non-tenure track faculty. And so in order to exceed the Regents limits, that requires the provost to have a legitimate reason for changing that limit. There wasn't a question, I just wanted to add that.
But good points and maybe worthy of some education. Beth, do you want the provost to take that?
Sure. That'd be great. Thanks.
So thank you for raising it. I do think that we need to do work at a policy level on some of this. There are, of course, very different faculty structures on the different campuses, and as we just heard, in some of the different colleges. So what the more specific mission is of a campus or a college helps to shape some of this. That needs to, of course, involve a lot of conversation with the faculty and shared governance more generally. In terms of academic freedom, Jerry, whether or not it appears apart from that part of the code that addresses tenure, academic freedom applies to anyone who is doing academic work on the campus in a research role or in a teaching role.
So worthy clarification. Thank you for that very much. And I'm glad you raised it so that we could clarify it appropriately because it's such an important point and something that we're all quite passionate about. So with that, we are now out of time. So moving to our next item. Let's see, I did item 5, correct? This is item 5, concerns actions on 2 educational policies. Is there any discussion? If no discussion, we'll proceed to a vote. Amber, if you could start the poll.
Scheduling it agrees with this thing.
10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 51 ayes and 6 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 6 is old business, of which there is none. The next item concerns new business. Please note that any new business will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting. Is there any new business? If there's no further business, then this will conclude our meeting.
People that Ola and Beth will be back in April.
Oh, yes. I'm asked to remind people, first of all, Ola and Beth, thank you for that presentation, and that you'll be back in April for next steps and conversations, right? So seeing no further business, we're adjourned. Thank you all. Stay warm, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.